guys, it's Ashley with picturesquefamiliarity.wordpress.com. I know it's been a long time since I've done a vlog, and that's because I had a baby. So it's our third. He is our third. It's a boy. And a lot went on that brought our miracle rainbow baby to us that I just want to share. And share the beauty of what the Lord led us through, and how I ended up having a birth that I had always wanted. So if you're interested in birth center births, natural births, getting through a miscarriage, things like that, keep listening, and I'll tell you about that. So in May of 2021, we had a surprise. I believe it was May. Yeah. The dates are a little unclear. I'm 5 months postpartum, so I'm a little sleep deprived. But yeah, so May of 2021, we had found out we were pregnant, and basically a couple weeks in, we had to things were just not seeming like my other pregnancies. So I felt like there was something wrong. I just knew inherently that there was. And I kept taking pregnancy tests to prove that there wasn't, which, I still had HCG in my system. So those were fine. But like when I went to the doctor to get a referral to the OBGYN, the pregnancy tests were coming back, positive, but not very good on my levels, which I've never had before. This is that was my third pregnancy. I've had two kids prior to that, and so I just kept feeling like something was wrong. And tried to convince myself otherwise, of course. But basically, that next month, I started bleeding. We went to the ER. They did an ultrasound and said that they believed everything was okay, and to just do bed rest. So I was on bed rest for, 2 weeks. And I'm not going to go into a lot of the details because it's painful, and it could trigger somebody else who's been through a miscarriage, and I don't want that. But basically, within that next couple weeks, I miscarried and didn't know. And then I had scheduled a ultrasound. We had decided to go with a birth center. So the Lord had used the situation we were in to get us to a birth center, which is a birth, it's a place where you can have a natural home birth experience, but with people with medical experience, or medical degrees. So the Lord used that to get us to this birth center, which I'm so thankful for, and I'll tell you why. But so we had an ultrasound scheduled in July, so that was 2 months later, and we got there to find out that I had miscarried, and I didn't know. So there were a lot of emotions. It was a very hard time in our lives. It was very hard for our girls. It was, it was something that for the first time in my life, I can say that I was very mad at God. I did not want to talk to him. I did not want to pray. I couldn't handle it. I didn't understand why we had to go through that. But the birth center was just amazing. They talked to me for 2 hours that day. They called me the next day to check in on me, and they also ran my levels while I was there. Ran my blood work to see when we could try to conceive again. And, we got positive news that we could start whenever we wanted to. So Um, my husband and I decided to wait a little bit and, a couple weeks, get deal with the loss, deal with our mourning, and get through that. Um, and I'm glad we did. It's still, and I'll share, it ended up still being very hard. I did not really fully get over it till I gave birth to our son. But I worked through, all those emotions, forgave the Lord. Um, but it was a very traumatic experience, and very, very hard on me. I had some wonderful people in my life, like my sister-in-law who checked on me, who took care of, helped to watch my girls when I was on bed rest, and things like that. I mean, just amazing. And my mom, of course, but a lot of people were just amazing and supportive. But we were very hush-hush about it. Because honestly, it was something I realized that when somebody's going through a mourning process, um, a, a miscarriage, a death, any of that, I found out the hard way that people avoid it. It's very hard for them to cope with the idea of loss, so they just don't talk about it, or they ignore it, and they don't offer. I mean, it's uncomfortable for people. So, I had a couple experiences where people knew what I went through and just wouldn't talk to me about it, and so it was something that we chose not to talk about, just amongst the loved ones who knew. Honestly, because it was so hard to deal with. It was heartbreaking for me. And within a month, though, it was a couple of weeks later, we prayed about it and decided that we wanted to try to have a baby. And we got pregnant right away, which was a miracle. I mean, the midwives had told us that a lot of times after a miscarriage, you're actually very fertile. Well, that proved to be true, and we were very blessed with that. Not a lot of people have that, but we were blessed to conceive right away. And I did a lot of things that this time around that I didn't do with my girls. Like, I went in and got my blood levels checked, make sure my progesterone was doing well, things like that. So I kept going in and getting blood work done to make sure that the pregnancy was progressing. And I have to say, this was the most emotionally hard pregnancy I've ever had, because I did deal with a lot of the emotions that I went through the miscarriage, but not all of them. And it made me very scared, very, very scared. Any twinge I felt, any cramping, if I wasn't throwing up enough, if I, things like that with morning sickness, just, oh boy, did the devil use it to try to get in my head. And it was a battle. It was a 9-month-long battle to fight against fear, pretty much. And it was hard. I had to stand on a lot of scriptures. Drenda Cassie has a book on pregnancy that she has a lot of scriptures in it that I stood on. And there's another book that has scriptures in it that talks about supernatural birth, giving birth with the Lord's help, basically. And so I just was praying those every day and trying to work through the emotions I had from miscarrying, and trying to just trust the Lord, and believe that everything was going to be fine. And so basically, it was a very good pregnancy. I'd started seeing a chiropractor a year prior, and then I switched to a chiropractor who specializes in pregnancy, and it just made me feel so much more secure because she was very gentle. She knew Webster techniques, which is the safe way to do adjustments, and she's very natural focused, so she would give me options naturally. Because when I'm pregnant, I don't want to put a bunch of stuff in my body that could hurt my baby. So, the Lord directed me to her, and she was and is amazing. I still see her for postpartum. Basically, within, there were a few, like I had really bad morning sickness this time around, really bad. And it lasted the entire pregnancy. It got a little better by the third trimester, but it was pretty bad. But thankfully, I was on the brewer diet, which the whole point of it is high protein foods. Salt intake help improve your blood pressure and make sure you're healthy and make sure you're getting enough to feed your baby. But it also helps with morning sickness. So that kept it at bay as best as it could go. It's basically over 100 grams of protein a day you're supposed to do, as well as increase your salt intake and things like that. But it did wonders for me. I had a very healthy placenta, which I'm going to tell you why that's super important later. But basically, so yeah, morning sickness was bad. I hit the second trimester and started feeling better all along the way, though. The devil came along trying to tell me all kinds of things, and I had to fight him daily, trying to bring my thoughts in line with the Word of God and just trust the Lord that everything was going to be okay. By the second trimester, Thanksgiving, it was right before Thanksgiving, I started bleeding. And boy, those thoughts came right in again. Of course, I really thought I was miscarrying again. My husband was amazing, so supportive, and encouraging and just telling me it's okay, everything's he wouldn't tell me everything's going to be okay, but he did say, the Lord's in charge and we have to trust him, and we'll believe that everything will be all right. And so let's see, I ended up bleeding for about a month off and on. There were a lot of things that we couldn't figure out exactly what was going on. The midwives couldn't either. But we did figure out, like, if I did too much vigorous activities like walking, exercising, things like that, it would cause it, exasperate things. Being intimate with my husband, not drinking enough water. So I changed several things, and that helped stop it. But it took me a month to figure that out. And by that time, we had an ultrasound right before Christmas to make sure there was the anatomy exam, to make sure everything was healthy with the baby, and to find out if it was a boy or girl. And of course, birthing center being amazing. They were amazing again. We had a wonderful ultrasound tech, and we asked her we had poppers, blue and pink, and she had to, pick the okay bag. It was hidden, which bag to open. And we went home that day and found out we were having a baby boy, which we were so excited about because we've been believing for a boy as well. We wanted to experience a boy. We love our girls very much, but we also wanted to have a boy. And we were just shocked. We really thought it was a girl. So we found out we were having a boy. It wasn't that much longer after that, actually, the bleeding had stopped, but the ultrasound had said, everything was healthy. I didn't have a low-lying placenta or anything like that. It was just, a series of circumstances that caused it. I also think it was from having a boy. It just was a different pregnancy. It's very different. It's a very good, healthy pregnancy, other than the fear and worrying whether or not, things would go okay. But I made it to 38 weeks, And at 39, it was days before my due date, at least like a week before. I started having contractions, but I thought it was prodromal labor, because I had that with my second. And um, I told my husband, just no, be near your phone just in case, but nothing. It just kept stopping. And on a Saturday, we had gone in the pool, just had fun together as a family. And I did a exercise called the mile circuit, which is supposed to help the baby's head go further into the correct position to enable labor and start labor. So I did that, which was tiring. But I remember looking out the window and thinking, what a beautiful day. This would be a good day to have a baby. Well, within, let's see, that night I was having more contractions, but again, still thought, not much of it because they weren't very powerful. And I didn't think it was, progressing very fast, but I decided to try evening primrose oil because I had heard that sometimes certain things can affect your cervix and cause labor to stall out, which I had issues with my first, and evening primrose oil will help that, because I had a biopsy a long time ago. They weren't sure if I had cervical cancer, so they did a biopsy, and evidently scarring can cause issues delivering, or labor progressing, basically. So I had done evening primrose oil, and at I laid down, and what's funny is I suddenly felt very nervous, and I told my husband, I need you to, I woke him up because he had fallen asleep really fast. I said, honey, I need you to talk to me. I'm nervous. What if I can't do this? The plus of having a birth in a hospital is, if you're worried about doing it, there's medicine there. And even though I'd given birth naturally without medicine with my second, it, I was nervous again. You just get nervous even though you can do it. And I was really worried because I was like, this is a birth center, what if I can't do it? And he just said, we'll get through this. The Lord's helped us through before. He'll get us through this time. And I said, well, what if I can't do 3 kids? And he's like, we've always been able to figure it out. You'll be fine. Next thing I know, I heard a pop, and I jumped out of bed, and my water broke. So 10 minutes later, after doing the evening primrose oil, my water broke. And it just gushed out, like with air, it just was just a lot. And I told my husband, my water just broke, and he's like, no, really? And I said, yes, honey, come look, my water just broke. So then I started shaking because I was nervous. But I was definitely surprised. Hey, maybe I was in early labor all those days, which obviously I was. So basically, it was go time, and we called our moms and the birth center, and I talked it through with the midwife, who told me to wait until I hit active labor. And we actually, the birth center was further away. So I was nervous about that because I'm like, I am not giving birth in the car. This is my third. And she kept telling me the third is actually a little odd sometimes. The second's usually faster, but the third can go faster or slower. A lot of times it's slower. And so, she just said, wait till it gets more intense. And I was nervous because with my first, my water broke initially as well. And, but labor did not progress. Now, part of it was I figured out that I'm a very private person when it comes to, people in my birth space. Not with doctors, though. Totally fine with doctors and midwives, but other people I get in mother hen mode and try to take care of them, which is ridiculous. So we figured that out with my first, but basically my labor had stalled out and we had to be induced, and it was a very hard first labor. It was very hard and traumatic. But so I was nervous about that. I'm like, great, my water broke. What if labor doesn't progress? Which was just silly because, man, it just picked right up. But the amazing thing was, see, I've been induced twice. This was totally different. Just very see, I do hypnobirthing, and we change the names of things. So not contractions, but surges. The surges just were, easy. Honestly, I was like, okay, what if this isn't really a contraction? Honestly, I'd never been able to go into labor on my own, which was a whole nother nerve factor issue. But it was super easy. It wasn't painful or anything, so that's where I was getting confused. When do we go? Well, my husband's mom came over to watch her kids, because at this point it's like 11 p.m. at night. And when my water broke, and the midwife told us to stay, and wait. And so I'm like, well, what if it doesn't progress? Well, I started noticing that it was progressing. I was feeling waves. They were very not painful, or anything like that. But she said when it starts taking your breath away and you find you can't talk, it doesn't need to be painful. It's just you can't talk. Like it makes you have to get into yourself. That's active labor. Well, it took we went for, it was a very beautiful time with my husband, I have to say. My husband and I went for a walk at night. It was beautiful outside. I got to do the whole taking a shower and letting it relax me. I got to labor at home for a while, which I've never been able to do. It was exactly what I wanted. I was able to listen to my hypnobirthing tracks, my music, which were all Christian songs to encourage me to listen to scriptures. And it just was lovely. It's very peaceful. And then by 3 a.m. we called and I said it's progressing fast, because I just could feel more and more waves. Not painful. It was intense, but it wasn't painful. And I knew we had to drive a while, so I grabbed a pillow. We hop in the car, and I'm so thankful for a pillow. Bring a pillow if you're going to do labor in a car, because that helped so much. And I was able to take a picture of my husband and I, and it just kept praying, like, Lord, please let me be dilating, because again, with my first, I didn't dilate. And we get there. It was so quiet. Nobody's in the birth center except the midwife and us. And we picked a room that we had found peaceful. And we get in there and she checks me, and they had originally said they wouldn't admit us till I think I was 6 centimeters dilated. Well, I was really worried about that. And I said, if I'm not, if I'm really low, don't tell me what it is. Well, she checked me and she just stood there, and I'm like, okay, tell me what it is, because now I'm worried it's a 1. Well, ended up being I was 4 centimeters dilated. So she thought I was going to be worried about that. That was awesome to me, because again, with my first, I was 1 centimeter dilated after being 2 days in labor with my water broken. Okay, so this, I'm like, 4 centimeters is awesome. It had only been a couple hours. So then, from there, it just picked up. We got there at 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m., and she put essential oils on me that are supposed to help progress labor naturally. And I did the peanut ball, and then I also labored on the toilet. And within, let's see, I want to say 2 hours, an hour and a half, I was ready to get in the tub. They have this birthing tub. And so I get in the tub, and I started transitioning already. It was just so fast and easy. Like, I really thought it was going to be more painful, and it was super easy. And I kept asking her, what if labor's not progressing? Why am I able to breathe? Because with the previous labors, when I was transitioning, that was really hard. And she's like, well, that's what's great about laboring naturally is your body gives you breaks naturally, as opposed to Pitocin, you don't really get breaks. So I kept getting breaks, but I started throwing up, which I never had before. But see, I forgot to include I had COVID. So 37 weeks I caught COVID, and it wasn't bad. You know, it's very easy, just fever for 2 days, and then I had, you know, a runny nose and a cough. Well, I had just made it out of the window where I could give birth at the birth center without a mask. The day after that, and I was over all the symptoms. But when you're in labor, you know, things are intense. Your whole body does like just everything. And so throwing up made all that runny nose come back, and that's where it got hard. It was very hard from then on, because I started pushing, and I couldn't breathe because like I just had a lot of discharge from my nose, you know, a lot of runny nose. I had to keep asking my husband to wipe my nose, and then I had a lot of back pressure. And I labored in the tub for about an hour or 40 minutes or so, you know, pushing. And then they switched midwives on me. Then they got me out of the tub, which is super fun pushing when you're getting out of a tub, by the way. They moved me to the bed, and I tried laboring while pulling. You pull on this thing, and then the midwife or nurse pulls too, so it provides you know, pressure for you to push. And that really wasn't working. And finally, you know, I was trying to listen, but it's really hard to listen to people when that was where it was hard. It was painful for the first time. And honestly, in previous labors, pushing was my favorite part, because you felt relief, you know, and you could do something. So it was very hard. I wanted to give up. I felt like I couldn't breathe. And then they moved me to the birth stool, and it was literally 5 seconds later I gave birth to my son. And it ended up being that the reason why it was so difficult is he came out like this with his hand cupping his face. So that's why it was so hard. He had lots of bruising because of it too. He's totally healthy though, thank you Jesus. And but basically the pushing part was hard because of COVID, his hands against his face, which I guess is called a nuchal hand. And so it was hard for my son and I. And then I ended up just having a harder time postpartum, exhaustion-wise, because of stupid COVID. I was just way more exhausted this time around. And but the pluses are, it ended up being my placenta was super healthy. They were very impressed with how healthy it was. So thank you, Lord, on that one. Which is also a huge testament, because sometimes the placenta is affected with COVID. But it wasn't. Mine was crazy healthy. Then I ended up having I ended up hemorrhaging. And thankfully, again, like, they're a wonderful place. They had everything prepped for it. But I ended up having blood clots the size of a grapefruit. Huge blood clots. And so they had to give me 2 different types of medicine. One was Pitocin, and then a newer medicine, which was to help stop the hemorrhaging. And eventually it did stop. It left me, you know, feeling kind of weak. But that also, you know, was from being weak from, you know, giving birth, pushing for an hour and 45 minutes, and also having just gotten over COVID. And then on top of it, you know, that big hemorrhaging. But they got it under control. And I have to say, the lovely part about giving birth in a birth center is having nurses and a midwife there, but not hovering. So checking on me, making sure everything was fine, taking care of me, taking care of our son. But my husband and I just got to lay in the bed. I could, you know, start meeting my needs with food. So my husband went and picked up breakfast because at that point it was, I gave birth in the morning, and we were there for about 6 hours afterwards. And so we just got to lay there, and I could breastfeed and snuggle with my son and catch my breath because I just had a really hard time catching my breath afterwards. And again, part of the COVID aspect. And then, my husband and I just got to lay there and I got to eat. I'll do a whole nother post of what I brought to the birth center, half of which I did not use, but it was great I brought smoothies. They were dairy-free smoothies because if you follow me, you know I'm allergic to dairy. But I had dairy-free smoothies that had tons of protein and electrolytes to replenish, what I lost in fluids. And, I had lots of water. I had raspberry leaf tea. I had, which helped, with postpartum as well as in pregnancy. Raspberry leaf tea helps with cramping and stuff like that. And let's see, I also had coconut water. So I was just consuming everything because, well, I was starved. But, even though it was exhausting, of course, giving birth is tiring, I was able to get up in a couple hours and take a shower, which the nurse helped with. And then, I got dressed and I was able to get to the car and come home and have, just sleep in my own bed as much as you can sleep with a newborn, and with my 2 kids meeting him, and my mother-in-law able to meet him. And it was, even though it was exhausting, because it's birth, it's tiring, of course, it was beautiful and what I had wanted for a birth, with the exception, of course, of having caught COVID at 37 weeks and, pushing so long, of course, and the hemorrhage. Of course, nobody wants that. But it's giving birth in a birth center, they were just so lovely. And, they check on you. You're supposed to track temperatures. And, instead of staying there, you are able to go home and check your temperature and the baby's temperature periodically throughout the night. And then you go and see them the next day, and you have far more checkups than with a hospital. Usually a hospital, once they discharge you, you only see them in 6 weeks. But with the birth center, you go quite a few times. But it's worth it because I got to go home and I didn't have to be stuck in a hospital, and I could still be with my kids and my family and rest at home and, just start enjoying life with, our family of 5. So I do have to say this time around postpartum, it was a little bit more difficult. I think it took me a while to figure out why. But I think because of having COVID, it was just more of a zap to my system. And I'm older than I was before. And also our son, because he had come out, like I mentioned, with his hand next to his face, he had messed up his neck and shoulders a little bit, and we had I saw a chiropractor who specializes in babies, and she adjusted him, and that finally helped. But I waited a little bit to do that, and he had problems calming down. He didn't like to be picked up certain ways. You could tell it hurt. The pediatrician said that, he's uncomfortable. So I never had that before, where it was a little hard to breastfeed him at times. He did not sleep much. You know how newborns usually sleep a lot of stretches. He was not doing that, so it was it was a little more difficult with that and more tiring. So I definitely found that this time around, it's been more tiring, and I have to say, boys are completely different. So different. This little guy loves eating constantly. He's 5 months, and yet he still eats every hour during the day. At night, he's finally doing some longer stretches. I just started 5 months in, getting him to nap longer than 10 minutes. Because a lot of times he would just nap 10 minutes on me and that's it. I mean, I don't know how a baby does that, but so it's definitely been a learning curve. You'd think I know what I would feel like I know what I'm doing. I don't half the time. It's all going to the Lord in prayer and asking Him for help and direction. But I am so thankful for, being able to give birth with the last baby the way that was in my heart, and to have that chapter of my life, just go a little more the way the Lord had put in my heart. Of course, not everything goes to the way we want it to go or according to our plans, of course. But, I'm very thankful that I was able to do a birth center. So I will talk about different, probably do other posts as I have more time. My son is napping right now, which is so nice. It's been a little bit of a struggle, but I finally am starting to get him on a little bit of a schedule. So I'll probably do other videos of what I brought in my birth center bag, because that was one thing I could not find. I could find home birth videos, I could find hospital bag videos, but birth center ones were a little tricky. So I'll probably, do an update with that, and just some of those details along the way. But thanks for listening.